Early on in the coronavirus pandemic, when people were hoarding essentials, we began seeing profiteers exploiting these anxieties and charging hundreds of dollars above normal prices for personal protective equipment such as face masks. At New Year's Eve a few years ago, in the great rush to get home following the fireworks, many resorted to rideshare platforms such as Uber to get home. And they were shocked to see that the cost of a ride home had more than tripled what it would normally be. So the question in these circumstances is whether a surge in pricing, an increase in pricing to deliver what is effectively the same service is justified. And this raises a broader question: how does one arrive at a price which is just and reflective of the value of a good or service provided in such situations? Now, some economists such as Adam Smith and Karl Marx, they argue that pricing should reflect the amount of labour employed in producing a good or service. Other economists argue that fair pricing is simply where supply meets demand in the market. Goods are only valued to the extent that there is a market for them. The School of Salamanca and the more recent Austrian School of Economics would favour this position. St. Thomas Aquinas was of the view that the just price is arrived at by a common estimation of what is fair by buyers and sellers coming together in a market. Now, of course, to decide what is fair, you can take into account, he says, changes in supply and demand, in location and time, and the utility or the usefulness of a product. But what about the context of the present pandemic? Can this situation justify exorbitant prices for face masks, hand sanitizers, even for toilet paper? Modern liberal economics is okay with charging much higher prices because, they argue, this will create an incentive to encourage suppliers to shift their operations to those hard-hit areas. St. Thomas Aquinas, on the other hand, would be more cautious. He would say that anyone who sets prices, particularly for critical items such as face masks, beyond the reach of most people, and would so deprive their fellow citizens of what is their due for their own livelihoods, then that by definition for Thomas would be unjust. Having said this, however, he does acknowledge that things are valued insofar as people need them for their livelihood. And so where there are costs and risks associated with meeting that demand, then he would, in fact, allow price increases to reflect this. But very importantly, he would not allow price increases simply because people stand in greater need of a product. In fact, he says that in an ideal world, the incentive of higher prices would not be required. The virtue of liberality, a subset of the virtue of justice, would mean that people should not be miserly in their economic behaviour, but rather be generous and willing to provide from the abundance of their own resources to those in need, without looking for extra reward, apart from that reward given by the producer and the manufacturer of all things, the Creator, who is justice and mercy and charity itself.